Okay, for this thumbnail, I think I'll just scoot to the side like this and I'll go. Cool, we're filming, right? Hey everybody, happy Thursday. Now today's video is gonna be a little bit different, but I'm really excited. Obviously you can tell we're in a very different setting. I'm at YouTube Space LA, but today's video is going to just be some of my thoughts on a particular topic because I find myself, because I go on walks. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I take walks about 3 times a week and I listen to podcasts. And after that, I find myself getting on Insta stories and just like rambling some of my thoughts. But instead of having those thoughts disappear in 24 hours, I would like to put some of them into video content. But this video is going to be based on the Casey and Candace Couples Therapy podcast. I listened to it last week. I'll link their podcast in the description if you want to check it out. And in their podcast, they were talking about expectations. And it really just got me thinking. Because one of the things that Candace said in the podcast I really liked was that expectations are resentments in the making. And while I agree with that, it's not 100%. I about 50-60% agree with her. And here's why. Expectations are something that we all have, right? I expect certain things from other people in my life, whether that be Sean or my family or my friends, and I also have expectations for myself. But if those expectations are communicated to those that I care about, like if I tell Sean, hey, I expect you to share in the duties of the house. Like if we have to go grocery shopping, I expect you to share in that with me or clean the house and share that burden with me. As long as I tell him about that and we have a conversation and he's aware of the expectation, I don't believe that those expectations lead to resentments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. But I think the important thing to remember is that we communicate what we expect of others. And a lot of people get really nervous to communicate, but without communication, that's when resentments build and fights start. And that got me thinking even further because it's still not black and white like that. If I communicate an expectation to someone, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can meet it. That just means they're aware of it. And my expectation for them might not be their expectation for themselves. And that's why I do, to some extent, agree with what Candace said, that expectations are resentments in the making. And so that made me even think further to the fact that most of the time, personally, I don't even know if I'm aware of what my expectations are. And so this past week, I've just been thinking about it. Like, what is it that I expect from myself? Even today, coming to the space, I was like, man, okay, so what would be my goal? And in my head, I'm like, well, Katie, your goal is to film 6 videos today. What? No. What I need to do in order to utilize the time I have here and to make enough video content so that you get your 2 videos a week and I'm still able to do other things like live streams, interacting, chatting in the comments, I need to film 4 Thursday videos. That should be the expectation for myself. I am too hard on myself and I set expectations that even I am like, that can't probably happen. And I don't even really know where I'm going with that. I guess the main thought for me was paying attention to what I expect and being aware of it and also being able to acknowledge when my expectations might be too high. And that doesn't mean that I should always settle for less because that's not a good frame of mind to be in either, but I tend to be kind of an asshole. I'm very type A. I can be really extreme. That's why I've never missed an upload date. Hey, I know I set myself up to this high standard, but that can also lead to burnout. I have to be very aware of how I'm feeling, how I'm doing, how much self-care I'm giving, and time alone that I allow myself to have. All of that is something that I've taken into consideration. And anyways, this podcast just really brought up a lot of thoughts for me. And I think that what I'm going to do, and something that I would encourage you to do, is to recognize what your expectations are. And it might be easiest to look out to other people. That was really easy for me to look into what I expect from my mom, who I talk to every day. Like, what are my expectations for my mom and my family and other members of my family? What do I expect from Sean? Because I interact with him every day. Are there certain things that annoy me? Why is that? Am I getting angry and not really understanding why? Is that an expectation that I didn't A, realize I had, or B, communicate to him? Probably. And then 3, expectations to my friends. Thinking about that and taking time to recognize what I expect. And then the harder part, what expectations do I have of myself? And that was really difficult because I think of it as I hold myself to a higher standard. I use different words. I have bigger goals. I want to do more. But that can be overwhelming and those expectations can be too high. And after that work, after number one, just recognizing what expectations I have for others and myself, is then taking it the next step further and assessing them. Where are they born out of? A lot of my expectations for Sean that I find, like the things that irritate me, right? Things I haven't communicated, might not even realize I had that expectation, I find come from like other shit that's happened that maybe I haven't processed through completely, or patterns in my life in the past that I'm so worried are gonna happen again that I like get really frustrated really easily. And just being aware of where these expectations have come from, then the thing that's really cool is we can decide whether we want to have those or not. Expectations aren't something we have to continually have happen and we have to believe in and we have to implement and we have to force on other people. They can just be things we're aware of, and we can decide that that's not what the hill we want to die on. That's not the big issue. That's not actually something we want to uphold, and we can let it go. Sometimes it's so freeing to just let shit go, am I right? And so that's kind of the next step, is like, which ones do we want to keep and hold people to, and which ones should we let go of because they're really not serving us anymore? And then the third, and the thing that I'm not even to this point yet. I'm still now trying to assess which ones I want to uphold, and which ones I want to not and let go of. But then third, communicating them to those that we love and care about. Because without that final step, they can't read our minds. I think for me, the sooner I realize that people can't read my mind, which if anybody asked another person, like, do you believe that I can read your mind? They'd be like, hell no. But we act in ways that assume people can. That's why we can be passive aggressive. I talked about that in another video. And I think it's just important for us to recognize that people can't read our minds. We're the only ones that know how we feel and what we expect from others, and we have to communicate that to them. And if we don't communicate that to them, there's no way for them to know or to try to act accordingly, because truthfully, when people really care about us and love us, they want us to be happy. And that doesn't mean they're going to give in to everything and do everything just the way we want. But if something's not that big a deal to them, you know, like for instance, Sean expects me to take my shoes off before I come into the house because he hates, you know, bringing dirt into the home. He's kind of a little germaphobe, but you know, hey, I love him and it's totally fine. I wasn't raised in a house like that, but I know he expects me to take my shoes off, and probably 80 to 90% of the time I do that because I know he expects it of me. Even if he's not home, I know it would bother him and it's not a big deal, and I can just let that go. And so because I care about him, that's not a big deal for me. And I find that in most of our situations in our life and expectations are usually those small little things, and it's not that big of a deal. And a lot of the bigger issues, like I expect you to, you know, tell me you love me and show me affection. If we communicate those and someone really loves us anyways, they'll do their best to meet us where we're at. And I don't know, those are just my thoughts. Do you like these types of videos? I know this is totally different, but it's just something that I really want to talk about in more depth and just kind of have like a stream of consciousness. These are things I think about. This is what goes on in my head all the time after those podcasts and after just walking on my own in silence, is like, how could I be a better person? And how can I help those around me better understand me so that our relationships blossom versus die? This video has been brought to you by the Kenyans on Patreon. If you would like to support the creation of these mental health videos, click the link in the description and check it out. What do you think? What do you think about expectations? Do you think they're just resentments in the making, or do you think there's a lot of steps, like I think, to kind of get us to a healthier place with them? I don't know. Let me know in those comments down below, and I will see you next time. Bye.